Are smartphones stealing the smiles of our children? Take a moment to reflect on this video of a boy, perhaps on his way home from school, silently looking out of the window, allowing the world to pass by after a busy day of learning. He is allowing his brain to switch off, taking the time to reflect on his day, perhaps thinking about what he needs to do when he gets to where he's going. When you next go on a bus, take note of how many young people of a similar age to this boy, perhaps between 11 to 13, are just staring out of the window, doing nothing. There is a high likelihood that a boy of his age would have his head down, engrossed in his smartphone. The desire to constantly chat with friends over social media, research any question that pops into his head, watch his favourite TV programme or play games is just too strong. The alternative of doing nothing just can't compete with that. He can no longer unwind. In fact, quite the opposite. The smartphone is highly stimulating. He checks something on Google, stays in touch with his WhatsApp group, calls his mum, plays a game or watches his favourite movie. He no longer needs to stop and think. And even at bedtime, can a young person resist the urge to check their phone one last time? And once the phone is back in their hands, can they put it back down again? And once they're lost back into the digital world, how do they stop and relax enough to fall asleep? Have you ever wondered about the effect of all this constant screen time, of cravings for constant reassurance from their peers, constant entertainment, playing gaming apps and browsing social media? What would happen if their smartphones were now removed or lost? Would they become nervous, perhaps anxious and panicked if their smartphone was not in their hand? And if so, doesn't all this behaviour sound like an addiction to you? Is it a coincidence that the numbers of children and young people with mental health issues have increased over the past decade, at the same time as mobile phones have become the norm? Whilst there have been plenty of studies on smartphone use in young people, the individual studies hadn't been summed up to give a picture of the true impact of smartphone use. Son and colleagues, funded by the National Institute for Health Research, Biomedical Research Centre at South London and Maudsley NHS Foundation Trust, and King's College London, decided to review the evidence. They wanted to find out if the growing use of smartphones by children and young people was becoming a problem, potentially turning into symptoms similar to addiction, and if it was harming their mental health. They did this by looking for research studies between January 2011 to October 2017. Two independent researchers checked that the studies were suitable and the quality of the studies were assessed. There were 41 studies that were reviewed, which had 41,871 children and young people participating. They focused on two questions. The first question: did the participants have a problem with the use of their smartphones? The aim of the first question was to find out how common this problem is. The studies they reviewed categorized problem use in different ways, but in all studies, the use of the smartphone was associated with some problematic behaviour. This could be an intense need to use the phone, not being able to stop using it, using the phone more and more, not wanting to do other activities, and not wanting to spend time with friends and family, and also not being able to stop using the smartphone even if they wanted to. The studies used different ways to measure the way the smartphone was used, including the smartphone addiction scale and the mobile phone problematic use scale. The second question they wanted to answer in a large-scale analysis was if there was a problem with use, did the young person feel that their mental health was suffering? The children and young people answered questionnaires on if they felt that they had any mental health problems. Interestingly, 1 in 4 children and young people stated that they felt they had a problem controlling how they used their smartphones, with a high association between problematic use and children and young people from high-income families. The results were especially high in young people between the ages of 17 and 19, with girls using more than boys. Boys reported overusing media apps and games, while girls spent most of their time on social media or communicating with family and friends. In addition, the type of behaviour shown towards the use of the smartphone is similar to that seen in other behavioural addictions, such as gambling, and there were significant links between problematic smartphone use and internet addiction, compulsive buying, alcohol, and smoking. Even more interestingly, there were strong links between those who had a problem with their usage of their smartphone and responses that they felt they had some mental health issues, such as anxiety, depression or stress, poor sleep quality, or were struggling to do well in school. Depression was particularly significant, with over 10,000 participants with smartphone use problems also reporting symptoms of depression. Whilst this is a good review, helping us to understand the underlying theme of problems with smartphone use in young people and the potential effect on mental health, it doesn't tell us much in terms of how to avoid this. It doesn't tell us how many hours of smartphone use is needed for it to become a problem similar to that of an addiction. It also doesn't say how much exposure is needed for the smartphone to start causing mental health issues such as stress or anxiety. It doesn't investigate which of the different uses of a smartphone has the biggest potential to be addictive and cause harm. It would also be interesting for future research to use parents' reports or a formal diagnosis by a psychologist to assess the mental health issues of the children and young people, rather than using research that is based on the young person's opinion of their mental health. And of course, what we don't know from this study is if there are other underlying reasons for the mental health issues the participants reported, other than the use of their smartphone. Whilst there are some gaps missing in the research, the study makes a strong argument for caution in young people's use of smartphones. Is it not time, given all of the research that has been done and all the potential harm that could be caused, that we stand together as society to increase the age that children are exposed to smartphones? At the very least, more information will allow us to educate our children on the very real problems that could be caused by overusing these phones. Perhaps by being more aware of the impact, they'll put it down for a minute when they're tired on the bus ride home and watch the world around them whilst reflecting on their busy day. Thank you for listening.